So, welcome to our.
You want me to do this first part?
Yeah, if you could do the first part, that'd be
Sure.
great, Dave. Thanks.
In accordance with the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Executive Order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, we are conducting this meeting in a hybrid model, both virtually and in person. The Public Works Commission is conducting this meeting September 14th, 2022 at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on the Zoom platform and in person. In accordance with the town's policy directive and guidelines issued on April 1st, 2020 and amended on May 7th. I ask that all Public Works Commissioners, town staff, and presenters activate their video and mute their microphone unless they have something to say or are participating in committee dialogue. For members of the public, when I open the meeting to public comment, in order to be recognized, please use the raise hand option in Zoom or use the *9 by phone. If you are recognized, please state your name and address. This meeting is being recorded and will be available for later viewing on the town's website.
Okay, thank you, Dave. Anna, if you could, and are you listening?
Yeah.
If you just take your view off this
Certainly.
for speaker purposes, that'd be helpful. And I wanted to just introduce the newest member of our 5-member commission, Sven Weber. Sven is present remotely, taking advantage of our new technology where we can have a hybrid, which is truly beneficial for extenuating circumstances. Sven, if you could unmute, you'd like to say hello to the rest of the commission, introduce yourself, you're welcome to it.
Yeah, thank you for the nice words, and sorry that I can't be there in person. Yeah, I moved to Concord 2 years ago, what we at that time thought was the middle of the pandemic, but it was just the beginning. I lived before 18 years in California. I'm born and raised originally in Germany, US citizen since 2014. Background is studied physics, have a master in physics, did a lot in environmental physics. But today my day job is in venture capital. So I had the privilege a few weeks back to have a very nice conversation with Ellen, and one thing came to the other. So thank you for having me and being part of this.
Welcome. Welcome. Thank you.
So, Dave,
All set?
well,
I, David DeLong, hereby call this meeting to order. All commission votes will be taken by a roll call. We will start with an attendance roll call of commissioners for practice. When I announce your name, please reply and state whether you are attending in person or remotely. Andrea Solomon?
Aye, in person.
Jeff Vassar is not here today.
not present.
Present. James Terry.
I'm present in person.
Sven Weber
Here remotely.
and David DeLong is here in person. The first item of business is to review and approve the minutes from the June 8th, 2022 Public Works Commission meeting. Are there any comments from the commissioners on the minutes?
I move we approve the minutes of June 8th, 2022.
I
Can I
second.
have a second? Okay, second. Roll call for approval. Andrea Solomon.
Aye.
Jeff is not with us. James Terry.
Aye.
Sven Weber.
Abstain, as I cannot judge if this.
Sure. Right. David DeLong. Aye. So the minutes are approved from the June 8th meeting. Review the calendar. Future proposed meeting dates. Do you want to say anything about that?
Sure. In the packet was sort of a outline of, again, this is a plan for our future monthly meetings. What we're trying to do is dovetail the commission's sort of role responsibilities with the rest of the town and town governance. And, some of the priorities are the budget, process. And we'll be talking a little bit more about that. So you'll see that there's various identifications of budget overviews you're going to get today. We'll provide more detail in the next meeting. If you see, kind of looking forward, we're going to have a roads program public meeting and a general fund capital budget plan that's scheduled for October 12th. And then you kind of look down the list of items and they sort of track, generally speaking, what we believe the needs of the town and commission are. Some of these items for some of the newer commission members are driven by Public Works Commission roles, responsibilities, various hearings for some of the enterprise funds, that sort of thing. But this is a guide, it's subject to change, but at this point, we sort of have placeholders and kind of see some of the more routine items. And then along the way, there's always going to be opportunities for things that hadn't been planned or predicted. And it depends on other boards, committees, public interest appeals, that sort of thing you may hear as well. So that's sort of the overview as we enter into the next kind of full year.
Any questions or comments from the commission? Okay, great. Thank you. Shall we move then to the first item of business on the agenda? Middle School Groundwater Conservancy District Appeal.
Sure. I will do a quick introduction, and I do see that Stephen Trester from Niche Engineering is going to be available to make a presentation on behalf of Concord Public Schools. A little background, and I'm going to share the screen while I do this because I think it's important just to know what it is we're talking about. In essence, there is a groundwater conservancy district bylaw. It is intended, its purpose is to ensure the protection of the waterways in Concord. The Public Works Commission is very intimately involved because part of the water systems are the drinking water supplies, but also understand that there may be impacts on wetlands. And because of that, the NRC, the Natural Resource Commission, is involved, and Board of Health as well, because sometimes it involves various issues with hazardous material storage or sanitary sewer, that sort of thing. The Concord Public Schools, the new middle school, proposed middle school to replace the Sanborn, is within a groundwater conservancy district. They, as part of the preliminary plan, show that their build out or development will include impervious cover that exceeds a threshold. Because of that, in essence, that threshold is intended to provide an opportunity for various boards, committees to evaluate and ensure that before approval through the ZBA, a recommendation is going to be granted from the Public Works Commission. And staff has been reviewing some of the plans. This is an opportunity to sort of bring the commission up to speed as far as the potential impact of the development and what can be done to mitigate. And based on that outcome, we'll be looking to see if the commission's interested in providing a recommendation to the ZBA for our upcoming hearing. So with that, Steve Ventresca, are you present?
Present.
Okay.
Hi, Alan.
Hi, Steve. So Steve, I have here, you have a presentation. I just wanted to give a lay of the land a little bit just for the commission. What you see is this is a image of property bounds and what you're showing on this, and then this shaded area. And this is the Jenny Dugan well. It's a well that's good for about 500,000 gallons a day of supply. Directly adjacent to this property, about 1,000 feet away approximately, is the site for the new proposed middle school. The Groundwater Conservancy District is this entire shaded area. Interesting, in this case, the school actually contributes water that falls on that property, contributes directly or indirectly to the drinking water supply at Jenny Dugan. And there is a divide, a groundwater divide. You can't see it, it's below ground, but where the groundwater may move in a northeasterly direction towards the Deaconess. What's really important for the commission is, well, this entire area falls under the district. There is a certain relevance to the proximity of a property and sort of the withdrawal point for a well. So in the case of Deaconess, it's 5,500 feet away, long travel time, lots of dilution, that sort of thing. For Jenny Dugan, it's only 1,000 feet away, little less travel time, could be in, 6 months to a year versus, 5-10 years or something. And proximity is, why we are sort of more concerned about Jenny Dugan as we review this proposal. So Steve, is that a reasonable tee up to?
Yeah, it is. Thank you.
Okay, so I will now go to
I
your
can do the,
presentation.
I'm happy to flip through, Alan, if share screen, or is it better for you to do it? Either way.
I can control it right now. We'll just keep it on
Sure.
track. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Alan, and thanks everyone for joining us today. So my name is Stephen Ventresca. I'm with Niche Engineering. I'm registered professional engineer in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And with me is Michael Dowhan with Sims Manning McKee Associates, SMMA. Mike is the landscape architect on the project. And so he and I have been working together on this project. And I think maybe Jen Susi with SMMA may be in the car driving, but at any rate, if you can go to the next slide, Alan, she's also here to talk about any building. So what we're here to talk about, as Alan mentioned, is the site and landscape overview of the project. The impervious area, we're proposing just above the 15% threshold for the site. We're approximately at 16.3% impervious area. That includes building, driveways, parking lots, and walkways. Wanted to talk about stormwater, in particular Rain Guardian system, which is a new proprietary pre-treatment for stormwater. We had submitted an application, a stormwater report along with the zoning board application and stormwater report that indicated we were going to do bioretention, low impact development design with bioretention and with underground chambers for infiltration. And we have some water quality units, which one of them in the Rain Guard is the Rain Guardian. And we wanted to provide, based on comments from DPW, additional hydrocarbon capture, which is one of the main concerns. So we can talk about that. Talk about water conservation that's is proposed for the building. We'll talk about outdoor water usage, and then very briefly discuss the hygiene plan or green cleaning, which is similar to what was provided for the CCHS project back in 2013, 2012. So we'll talk about site and landscape. Mike, is this where you wanted to pick up? You want me to continue? Go to the next slide, please.
Yeah, that's
Alan.
fine.
Thanks.
Yeah, I just wanted to, hello, everybody. Michael Dowhan from SMMA, landscape architect. I just wanted to take a moment to sort of capture where we are and where we're going with this. So we're all familiar with the existing Sanborn site. The site, we've sort of approached the existing site as sort of broken into 3 layers, right? So there's this upper plateau level area that sits along Old Marlborough Road where the existing school and the existing fields are located. And then there's a lower level where there are some existing schools that are about 40 to 50 feet lower than that upper level that are more proximate to the wetland, the resource areas, the well, elements like that. And then you have this sort of middle area, which is the slope and all the existing mature woodland that sort of buffers and breaks between the two elements. So when we started looking at potential locations for the new school, we were trying to be cognizant of a few things. We want to stay away from any of the resource areas. We want to stay away from the well. We were also trying to avoid working into any real steep slopes. We also knew that we needed the flat areas for the new field program, which is a little more robust than what's there right now. And of course, we needed some space for the additional parking and vehicular bus and car circulation, which is also by definition, since we're taking 2 schools here and combining them into one on one site, and of course two sets of faculty and staff combining them into one, we knew that by default we were going to need a little more paving area too. So as we started to look at the site and started to think about the condition of the site and what we wanted the experience for the students to be, we quickly realized that we would be looking at siting a building that would really try to integrate the building as much as we can with nature and the natural processes around it. So if you can go to the next slide, please, Alan. This is the proposed site plan, which is a result of all that study. You can see we've stayed away from that lower area, that what I was calling the lower level of the site. Yeah, we're completely staying out of there. That's completely outside of the scope of work. No work is going to be done down there. We're essentially where the existing building sits right now will be the new and improved athletic facilities, a new boys baseball field, a new girls softball field, and an MIAA regulation size soccer pitch. All natural grass. I should mention that. That's important. All natural grass, no artificial turf. And the other more flat areas is where we're planning on placing most of the vehicular circulation and parking. All the buses and cars will drop off and pick up. We're trying to accommodate the cars that drop that sort of queue on Old Marlborough Road now in the afternoon to pick up. We're trying to accommodate them on site and try to get those cars off site, off the road and onto the site. So there's a little more space for all that. And then of course you can see the building. The building is essentially broken into two pieces. On the left where that number 1 is, that's sort of the we'll call it the public portion of the school, where the gymnasium, the auditorium, et cetera, all those elements that would be open to the public are. And that's sort of tucked closer towards the road and more proximate to all the pavement and parking, bus drop off, vehicle drop off and pickup. And then we have we took advantage of some of the topographic features of the site to create sort of a bridge that spans over some of the topography. And then to the left there, yeah, right above number 5 is that smaller wing of the building is the classroom wing. So that wing is 3 stories and it's completely encircled on the north, south, and east sides by either existing woodland or green open space. So anytime a student looks out a window in that classroom space, they won't see cars or parking or pavement. They'll see either fields or the woodland and open space. To the south of the academic wing, classroom wing, you can see there where that number 5 is. That's where the majority of the outdoor classrooms will be located. Again, terracing down even more and really trying to integrate that site into the existing woodland to remain, and really trying to pull the students into the site and into the property and into those lush landscape areas. And then there's a series of pedestrian connections that connect all of the outdoor spaces as well. So that's hopefully a pretty good oversight of the existing conditions and the design philosophy. And then I think I'll hand it back to Steve, and he'll move along with some of the more technical aspects.
And Steve, if you could just keep it to sort of high level, you don't have to drill too far in the technical, but okay, how is this going to impact the water quality,
Sure,
water recharge, quality,
Sure.
and quantity, and just a couple minutes.
Yeah, so stormwater controls, as you know, you can go to the next slide, Alan. The existing school currently, if you're familiar with the site, water sheets off directly off the pavement into the surrounding landscape. There are very few leaching catch basins on the site. And so for the new school, what we want to do is sheet flow water from the parking lots and driveways into bioretentions, which are those green areas. And those will have infiltrative capacity and also treat using plants and soils that will be installed there as part of the systems. And then to the left of the screen, where you have that sort of, that blue-green type of, those are the chambers. That's where we're doing the majority of our infiltration. We're looking to do about 3.2 inches of infiltration in that area, in addition to infiltration in the bioretention basins. So a much greater increase of infiltration for the site for the new school, in addition to the water quality that we talked about. So one of the water quality systems are the bioretentions themselves with the soils and plants, as I stated, and then the infiltration systems. The chamber systems, they have what's called isolator rows, and those allow for more TSS, total suspended solids removal, and additional treatment of the stormwater before it's recharged. And if you go to the next slide, as part of the the sheeting of water, what we'd like to do is use these rain guardian systems, and those will pick up basically they're curb inlets. And what they'll do is they'll screen out larger debris, leaves, trash on the upper level. And then there's about a foot, maybe 18 inches of depth where there's a little bit more sediment capture and then overflow into the bioretentions. And so those are a newer technology, but there's a study done that shows there's decent TSS removal of 50 to 60%, which is decent for stormwater. And we're going to work through those details with engineering, but wanted to at least point out that we're doing some pre-treatment, which is required under the stormwater handbook before we go into the bioretentions. If you go to the next slide, Alan, this is the hydrocarbon capture that we're talking about. And this gives you a profile or a section view of the rain guardian. So if you go from left to right, water comes in, goes into the rain guardian, the trash guard up at the top on the, keep going out, yeah, right there, and then falls through the grate, and then it comes out at the bottom there. And then in this case, will spill into about 100-gallon area of capture of water. And it's a stone line plunge pool, I'm calling it. And it's very hard to see, but there's a dark line that's underneath, and that's the filter fabric. It's called Ultra X-Tex. And what that is a fiber matrix that captures hydrocarbons, oils, gases, and whatever that comes off of the pavement. And so that allows water to filter through, but it captures and holds on to oils and gases. So that system is what we're proposing to treat hydrocarbons. Any larger storms, after the hydrocarbon is captured, as it filters through, larger storms will spill over and go into the bioretention and continue to be treated traditionally through the bioretention soils and the plants. Thanks. So if you want to go to the next one, Alan, I know time is of essence here. So water conservation, this is also important for your group. So we can go to the next slide. So we're using a series of indoor water systems with low flow fixtures. We're metering internally to understand where the flows are and if there's any issues and how to adjust those so that we're providing water conservation measures. And then, and you can see these are the kind of standard designs that are proposed. And I believe a lot of this was used at the high school, and maybe it's been even more efficient now. And then outdoor water systems. There is an existing irrigation system currently. The plan is to reuse that if needed for the athletic fields. We're not proposing to use potable water for any irrigation. And that's those are discussions that we're having with Alan and his group, which is you guys, and also with the planning board. So that's it. And sorry, if you want to go to the next one, the hygiene plan. Essentially, green cleaning products, proper storage, proper maintenance. Again, this is something that CCHS has used, was implemented, and it's just updating it to current guidelines and current products that are out there, and just getting making sure that Concord Public Schools is okay with the plan. I know they're updating or creating a plan right now, and we'll issue that to the planning board and also to this group when it's ready for review. That's the presentation. Thank you for listening. If you have any questions, we're happy to answer them now, or if there's anything you want to follow up with later, we're happy to do that as well.
Commissioners?
Yeah, on the capture of the hydrocarbons.
Yep.
The fabric there.
Yeah.
Is that something that needs to be replaced
Just what I was gonna ask.
at various times, or how is the school going to make sure that it continues to do what it's supposed to do?
Yeah, so it has a longevity, and I'm trying to find out how long it is. Based on the literature that I provided to you, it appears to be 4 or 5 years at a minimum. I guess it's anticipated that as time goes on with the school, there'll be less and less vehicles that are using hydrocarbons, and that includes the buses. So there will be a point where this would have to be potentially swapped out, and honestly, I could only see that being swapped out if there is an actual spill where you have a significant amount of hydrocarbons going to a particular area.
Okay, man, that's good to know. I mean, if nothing else, that's something the school needs to be aware of.
Yeah.
Correct.
Who would be
Correct.
maintaining this system?
These will be maintained, and it's good that Russ is on the call. Concord Public Schools will be maintaining the systems that will be proposed for this project site.
Yep. Introduce Russ, are you there?
Yep, I am here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry, Russ, I didn't know you were there. You want to just introduce yourself on behalf of the Concord Public Schools?
Yep, I'm Russ Hughes. I'm the Facilities Director for the Concord School District.
Great.
So yeah, if You know,
Are
if
these, go ahead. Go ahead, sorry.
I believe we have a system like this out at the Willard School.
Oh, okay.
So, or I know we have the retention ponds in between
Yeah.
the parking spots. I don't know if we have that fabric in there.
The fabric is newer, so this would be a newer twist on it, but this is
Okay.
very similar to what was installed at CCHS, where you have that large parking lot that sheets into that larger
Yes.
basin.
Yeah,
So that currently does not have any carbon capture. And that's also in Groundwater Protection Overlay District. And at the time, the reviews that went through, we satisfied that by providing a gravel strip between the parking lot and the basin. But times and technology advance, and so now we have this different system of providing hydrocarbon capture, which is probably more efficient than what's out at CCHS today.
So I'm assuming that you've done a lot of looking at impervious surface and feel that there's no way that you can get to the 15% so that you didn't have to go to the zoning board of appeals.
Correct. We looked at and parking, as you know, is a significant contributor to creating that impervious area. And we're actually looking for relief from parking with the ZBA because based on zoning, we would have to go an additional, I don't know, Mike, do you know the exact number? We're currently looking to do 150 spaces for this site,
Right.
I think.
And zoning had us at 192. So we're asking
192.
for relief for that, which is about, in terms of area, that's about 11,000 square feet, or about a quarter of an acre. About a quarter of an acre pavement reduction if they allow us to, and that 150 number is based on what the
school
administration
action
says they need,
Mhm.
right? So it makes a lot more sense to just give them what they need rather than to put more
And-
pavement in there than necessary.
And initially we had proposed using porous asphalt, but because of the stormwater regulations and the sensitivity to the Jenny Dugan well,
Yeah.
we took that off the table because of this issue with potential spills and hydrocarbons. Otherwise, we would have pushed for a porous asphalt type of system here.
Excuse me, Dave. Jeff Vassar would like to be recognized.
Hi. Sure, Jeff. Hi, Jeff, please.
Hi. Thank you, Anna. Couple quick questions. Thanks for your presentation. What's the amount of impervious? Do you know the amount of impervious that's out there now relative to what's being proposed? And I'm sorry, I missed the beginning part of the meeting. Maybe that was mentioned.
So it's at, Steve, I can
go ahead.
handle that one. It's
Yeah, go ahead.
at about 12.3% or so. And we're proposing somewhere around 16.3%. So I think my calculation was well, let me think about that for a minute. We're adding an additional, in terms of acreage, we're adding about an additional, we're going from 3.9 acres of impervious to 5.1 acres of impervious. So we're taking two buildings and putting them into one, taking two parking areas and putting them into one, but we're really only adding about 1.1 acres additional of impervious.
And you said the current site, is there any stormwater management on the current site, or is it all surface
There
flow?
isn't. It's all surface flow that sheets off into the surrounding landscape. You have a handful of leach and catch basins, but that's it.
Okay. And is everything you're proposing going to be infiltrated on site, so no discharge off site, or is it, I don't know if there's a street system there that you might be tying into.
No, we're not allowed to discharge into the town system, so everything will be infiltrated and discharged within the site. And so I just note that we're reducing rates and volumes from the existing condition.
And the question of maintenance came up by a couple of the commission members. And again, I apologize, I missed Alan's opening statements, but in regards to maintenance of the traps to collect debris, as well as the filter fabric, Alan, does the ZBA and planning board and public works all have the potential to give conditions of approval that would relate to maintenance, or is that more, is everybody looking to us to do that?
No, so that's a great question, Jeff. All entities, Health Department, Natural Resource Commission, and Public Works Commission provide recommendations to the ZBA. So it's ultimately the ZBA's decision.
Okay,
We can incorporate any thoughts, and we can consider the maintenance consideration into the comments that we can draft on behalf of Public Works Commission, just to ensure they're part of the record.
okay, so good, that's good. So everything gets funneled to one entity and there's not any contradicting comments or anything. Hopefully it'll all get resolved at the ZBA level.
Correct.
And so I will just add that as part of the stormwater report, we are required to provide an operation and maintenance plan that can be reviewed and make comments on, and we can adjust accordingly.
Okay, and I also compliment you for your innovationness on this solution here.
Thanks.
And actually, one more comment, and it's more of a town comment. Obviously, you're combining two schools onto one site, but what's happening at Peabody, and is the future use of that site, might that reduce the impervious over there?
That is, and so that was actually asked last night at planning board hearing.
Okay,
That is, so that will go back to the, it'll be taken out of the school system, if you will, and that'll go back to the town in some form or some way. And then the town, I guess, can decide what they want to do with it. So that's what's
Okay.
happening with the Peabody School.
but that's not in a well protection zone, is that correct, Alan?
Yeah, the Peabody School is not.
That's correct. It's outside.
All set, thank you.
Have you seen the two reports that have been prepared by Public Works and the engineering? And do you have any concerns or questions regarding those?
We have seen the two comment letters. I don't have any concerns or questions at the moment. We will work through with town engineering, and then we'll also work through with, I don't know if it's Giovanni that we're working through directly, Alan, or with you, but we'll work through those comments.
Okay.
I just have, Dave DeLong, I just have one question that we have that hasn't been talked about. First of all, I think the design looks really cool. I congratulate Steve, Mike, and Jen, all really impressive. I heard the word non-potable water because the fields have to be maintained. All right. I mean, I'm talking about the playing fields. And as a neophyte in the water area, what are the implications of that for flow through to any wells or are there any issues with the water that's being used to maintain the fields, the playing fields? Maybe that's a dumb question.
No, I think to be maybe a little bit more specific, there's an existing well, not the Jenny Dugan well, there's an existing well that the school uses currently specifically for the irrigation system on the existing fields. Our plan, if we move forward with irrigating the new fields, is to simply tap into that same well and
Okay.
just use that source for the irrigation for the new fields. I don't know if
Okay.
that helps clarify or if that muddies it even more.
Is that the same then? Is that, so it doesn't change
It's taking water from the same
source?
source. So it would intercept water that might otherwise be withdrawn from the well. We'll have to keep our eye on it.
terms of
Obviously, the challenge is you're building new facilities and the expectation of the fields are going to be,
Yeah.
very
Yes.
high.
Yeah.
And Public Works does provide support for maintenance. I'm not sure exactly we presently do at the existing fields. We're in a conversation with the school and recreation department as we speak about longer term needs and interests for the town, but it's on our radar. It's of interest. We have to be mindful of it because whatever happens, if there's an adverse impact on the drinking water supply, that's a problem. But we will be involved and engaged. And, I think part of the investment in the fields has to be done in a way so it can be sustainable. And there's a lot to be said with investing the right level in the soil compositions and, sort of the irrigation configuration, as well as maintaining it. There's going to be costs associated with it to ensure you don't waste water. So
Right.
it's good. It's a good question.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks. That's all from me. Any other questions? Do you want me to
Let me make a motion.
do this motion, please?
Yeah,
Be
okay.
my guest.
I move that we authorize the director to prepare a memorandum to the zoning board of appeals for signature by the Public Works Commission chair outlining groundwater protection and mitigation recommendations to be considered for the Concord Public Schools waiver request to exceed the impervious cover threshold as specified within the Groundwater Conservancy District bylaw, detailed within Concord Public Schools preliminary design plans dated August 1st, 2022, and further specified within the public meeting.
I second.
Second, any discussion about that motion? By commissioners, any comments either here or online? If not, I'll take a roll call. Andrea Solomon,
Aye.
Jeff Vassar,
Yes.
James Terry,
Aye.
Sven Weber. He may have dropped off.
Aye. Sorry.
Great,
Aye.
perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Sven. David DeLong is aye. So that motion passes.
Thank you for the presentation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Gentlemen,
thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
excellent. Thank you. Great work.
Thanks. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Enjoy your commute home.
No, thanks.
We're going to move to the second item, the drafting the scenic roads regulation discussion. Director Cathcart.
Sure, a little, we sent along a memorandum, just providing a little bit of an overview, but just a reminder to the group and to the audience. The scenic road bylaw was passed at the last annual town meeting, in essence, providing an opportunity for the planning board to have enforcement authority for activities that involve stone walls, shade trees along designated ways, public ways, and those are called, scenic roads. Within the bylaw, there were specific roadways designated. There's an understanding that in the future that could be amended and added to. So go ahead.
Can I
Dave.
just interject something?
Please.
For the board, this presentation right now is there's no vote required on this, right? This is just the
Oh, I'm
purpose of
sorry, yeah,
this
correct. Yeah,
conversation
yeah.
is,
So I will, I'll get there.
okay.
So in essence, with part of the town meeting and the hearings that went into this, adoption, there was interest and concerns that were raised by public works staff as far as potential redundancies and authority and roles and responsibilities. We reminded the Public Works Commission, it was relatively new, that there were already responsibilities that were administered through the Public Works Commission. And long and short is the law requires the administration of this bylaw to be enforced through the planning board. At town meeting, there was discussion on ensuring that the Public Works Commission would have a voice because the impact could be, there would be impact on public works operations. And because of that, the draft regulations have been developed. They've been shared with staff. We've reviewed them. We included a copy of the 2 or 3 pages in the packet. And the planning board is interested to, get some feedback. And I think, with that, the recommendation, we're going to be looking for, something, some consideration from the Public Works Commission on support of the staff's comments. We're going to have a conversation about what the staff's opinions and thoughts are. We're going to invite Steve Dukran to the table so he can sort of present a little bit of an overview and answer questions. But I'm hoping the commission has a chance to take a look at the memorandum, which highlighted overarching interests, and then whether you want to get into the actual red line or not, or the regulations is your choice. But Steve, is that, Dave, does that help? Oh, what's the actual action?
Yeah,
item?
no, the point is, there's no vote here. We're being informed, correct?
That's right. And there's going to be a
We're
recommendation.
gonna recommend,
I just want to be clear on the action step that
Sure.
we're being called on to how we're listening to this conversation. Thank you.
Okay, Steve Dukran, town engineer. So I prepared a memo and I highlighted some of the, I would say concerns, but some of the comments that we have made on the draft regulations. And I can just walk through some of those. So you all have a copy. So under the draft regulation, section 1, authority, 1.1 authority. Obviously, as Alan mentioned, the authority is given to the planning board to administer the regulations for this bylaw. But we are asking, as it hasn't been done yet, that the thorough legal review be performed of both the authority for this bylaw as well as the parallel bylaw that we have in public works, which is named private digging of roads. We have that, it's been around for a long time. We use that for the permitting of work in the right of way, and this scenic roads bylaw is applying to stone walls and trees in the right of way. So we think there may be some conflicts or some ambiguities that need to be clarified through a legal review. So we're asking for that. Move down to where I guess a lot of red. The definition. Look at the definition of stone walls, 1.4.3. The definition presented in the draft, it's simple and it needs a lot more defining. We're asking, should there be a date as in form of a minimum age of a stone wall before you call it a scenic stone wall? I think that's important. Well, I should say we think so. As well as dimensions for a stone wall. You know, if you put a couple of cobblestones along the edge of a street, does that constitute a real stone wall? So there should be some minimum dimensions. And the original purpose of having a stone wall, you know, this whole protection of stone wall started because of the original laying out of roads using stone walls, you know, many years ago. And if you want to preserve that history, you should probably go back to that original purpose, whether it's for laying out the street or maybe placed there for historic significance, making the road scenic. So we want to have those included as part of that, defining that stone wall. And then highlight what could be exceptions to a stone wall. For instance, a stone wall that's retaining earth. If that stone wall fails because it no longer is serving the purpose, because structurally over time it's lost its integrity, then that should not fall as in the definition of one of these protection or protected stone walls. Right, and 1.4.5, stop me if you want to discuss any further. I'm just moving along. Cutting or removal of trees. We added there that
Steve, I'm going to interrupt 1 second. Just so we understand, the implementation of the bylaw was a significant event. Now we're massaging something which is pretty much, so the focus and attention is more nuanced. You know, so we understand we're going to be sharing some of the roles, responsibilities. So as you listen, Steve's drilling into the nuances of some of our concerns and interests to share with the planning board. So just if that helps, because you're not going to see anything monumental. It's more of the implementation challenges we see.
Right.
Just sorry.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
Dave, Jeff would like to be heard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jeff.
So Steve, since you said we could provide comments as you go through it, I have a comment or a question on the stone wall part. So first of all, I think it's great that you are bringing this up for discussion purposes before we need to take a vote, because we are, gives us an opportunity to go back and forth on some things. So on the stone wall, one, I'm not quite sure I understand why retaining walls should not be considered a stone wall. If they have failed, then obviously they need to be repaired. But why wouldn't we want that to go through the review process so that they're repaired in a way consistent with the scenic byway intent.
My quick answer to that would be some stone walls that serve the purpose of retention of earth may no longer could be designed by current standards. Certain walls of certain heights and dimensions will need now to pass the seismic requirements.
Right, but the statement is stone walls that are used for the structural reinforcement or retention of earth are not included in this definition. So if we keep that in, we're categorically excluding anything that's a retaining wall. And I think we need to reconsider that.
My understanding probably is that Public Works could decide what was needed based on current rules and procedures versus having to go to the planning board to talk through it.
I'd still
I mean,
I'm happy to come in the office and talk it through with staff.
Jeff.
Yep. And then you were going to get on to removal of trees, Stephen, so I'll just jump there next. Are we recommending that the tree warden alone will be the determining person for the cutting and removal of trees, or that they have that ability and they would be included in the process?
We are recommending that the tree warden will be the sole person. These are trees in the right of way.
Yep.
And the tree warden today has that kind of authority to decide on trees. So we're just adding that to the definition, making sure that everyone understands that it's up to that person to make that decision.
And I guess similar to the retaining walls, if it's certainly a public safety issue, that's one of the functions of a tree warden. But I'd like to talk to staff more about that one too at an appropriate time.
Why can't we talk about it now?
Yeah, you can raise any questions.
Okay.
Jeff. This is an opportunity to, and Aaron McCloskey, who is the tree warden, is also present, so he can help to sort of, come on up, Aaron, if you'd like, if we talk trees. As the tree warden.
The tree walk, group tree talk.
If the scenic bylaw, one of the requirements is to, as voted on by the town, is to review the removal of trees within a scenic roadway, along a scenic roadway. First of all, how can we remove that approval process from the planning board? I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong, how can we remove that from them if
We've
it's
had a
already
tree
part?
warden for how many years? I mean, when we discussed all this, when it was presented to this committee, and I tried to make the point to the planning board and to the town, we have someone in place who does that. So now you're taking that authority from someone who has that experience and that has had that position for a while, and you're putting it into the hands of a planning board, a volunteer board who may or may not have that expertise. You're taking it from someone who has that expertise and you're putting it into a committee that does not have that expertise.
No, I totally understand. And I understand we brought that up before town meeting, but if the town has voted to adopt the scenic road bylaw and it provides for the protection of trees, and I'll get into shade trees versus trees in a minute, is the Public Works even allowed to remove trees from the planning board's review process? Whether it's right or wrong, I'm just wondering if, since town voted this in, can the trees even be removed from their review process?
Well, I think if you go to section 3.5, which talks about exceptions, that there is the way where the regular maintenance and hazardous problems with trees can be taken care of without going through the regular scenic bylaw process.
And during the many discussions we tried to have about this, we pointed this out every single time. And it was thought at the time, well, we won't make such a big deal out of the trees. We'll make a big deal out of the stone walls. So I'm pretty sure that it is okay for us to leave our tree warden's authority in place and not give it to the planning board.
So just for clarification, the tree warden's authority doesn't change. And Aaron, you can maybe speak to that. It's more of the potential for overlap and, mix of, what do you need to do
Authority.
in order to remove a shade tree?
Correct.
So Aaron, maybe you can speak a little bit to, is there some sense of, comfort for Jeff's perspective? Because he's saying, town
Well,
meeting, I understand the
I-
question.
It's not so much, I'm sorry to interrupt. There's a matter of comfort, but there's also a matter of what was approved as part of the bylaw. I don't know if we need legal opinion on that or if someone else will provide that. But can we even, it's like the town said, yes, we're going to give the planning board the ability to look at trees within a scenic byway, within the right of way along the scenic byway. And now we're saying, but we're going to take that away from the planning board. And whether it's right or wrong, it's not a matter, I'm not trying to impose an opinion here of what's right or wrong. It's more of, can we even do that now that the bylaw has been passed?
I'll start, I guess, a little bit of clarification on definition for those who don't know what a public shade tree is. So by definition, and definition is Mass General Law, Chapter 87 is a public shade tree law that governs the protection, the care of all public shade trees. And by definition, a public shade tree is any tree located in the public right of way. Public right of way widths vary on every right of way. Any tree that any portion at the base of the tree that is in the right of way is considered and protected by Mass General Law.
Does that no matter what the caliper, Aaron?
If you have a 20-inch caliper tree and 1 inch is over the line into the right of way, it's considered a public shade tree. It's under the jurisdiction of the tree warden and falls under the protection of Chapter 87.
So even a 1-inch caliper Norway maple which is an invasive species and grew on its own would be subject to your review. Is that correct?
So any tree, and it goes into detail, any tree that's over 1.5 inches DBH is considered a public shade tree.
Okay.
It does not define by species at all.
Yep.
It's a very old law. So even Norway maples, people try to say, oh, let's cut down invasive. I look at all trees the same.
Yep.
Norway maples can be nice trees, actually. But anyway, yeah, so the tree warden has jurisdiction over the trees, governs the protection of the trees. A tree can only be removed for essentially 2 reasons. Well, 3 reasons. First is if it is considered a hazard. The tree warden determines whether or not the tree is a hazard tree. So for public safety, I can say that a tree can be cut, pruned, or removed. The second option is a tree goes to a public shade tree hearing, which is a public meeting that is posted 2 weeks in advance in the local newspaper and on the tree itself. We hold the tree hearings at the tree. I open it to the public. People are able to come. If I receive any objection to the tree removal, either at the hearing or in advance, I will deny the removal and then the tree will stay. People can appeal my decision by going to the select board and the select board can overturn my decision or the tree warden's decision. The third option is if there's some type of a highway safety road expansion in the town, a highway surveyor, it's an older term that's used in the law, determines that there's an issue, a tree can be removed, but that's rare. So really in the Concord, the only 2 times I've removed trees, hazard trees, or it goes to a tree hearing and I receive no objections, I will allow removal. So even if it's a tree that's on a public, let's say, in the tree, Chapter 87 talks about scenic roads bylaw and the adoption. I think the town adopted the bylaw. We're trying to define what that means for this specific town. And the way that I see it is it's double protection, if you will. So if we had a public shade tree hearing, received no objections and approved the removal, it still has to go before the planning board to review the tree to be removed. So that's how I look at it. And I think we're trying to clean that up a little bit because there's going to be situations where I'm still going to need to do maintenance on the tree, a tree. There's quite a few roads that are listed as scenic roads proposed. All those trees need maintenance. And what we're trying to clear up and clarify is that even though we have this bylaw in place, that's not going to stop CPW or the tree warden from performing routine maintenance or removal of hazards. We don't have to ask for additional permissions.
Jeff, are you trying to get a point in here?
No, I I greatly appreciate the education. Thank you very much. Again, but it is duplication of responsibilities here. But I just question if we can remove the duplication of responsibilities. That was my main point.
It's a good, and that's something we need to, evaluate and just go back to the actual bylaw, which may be less prescriptive. There's lots of discussion. The bylaw is very succinct and it talks about the development of these regulations. And now we're in where it matters. So I think you hear the comment, and I think the question is how significant a request can be made to the planning board to consider not, because again, it's ultimately their decision. Let's just be clear, we're going to have recommendations. It's their decision. And we really want to make sure that we get something that is appropriate. That's your question. Can we ask this question? And they're going to be in a position of having to, agree or not ultimately.
And for example, to avoid duplication of approvals here, could we recommend and maybe make the planning board feel more comfortable that if there is a public shade tree hearing, I don't know if I have the wording correct, that the planning board would be notified and they have an opportunity through the shade tree bylaw to comment as anybody from the public would be able to comment, but it's at that one meeting. That's their opportunity to comment on it and not have to have two processes, but they still have the ability to comment on it.
Yep, duly noted. Yeah.
Dead trees.
Thank you, Jeff.
Do you still have a hearing?
Depends. You can have a tree that's dead that stands if there's no risk if it's gonna fall and doesn't do anything.
Just leave it?
We just might leave it.
Okay.
Depends on the location. We look at targets. There's a lot of things we look at when we determine whether it's a tree.
He knows what I'm talking about. Okay. So if we can back up a little bit then, Steve, I want to go back to 1.4.1, the right of way.
Definition?
Yeah, it says means the total land area acquired by the town on the roadway. Other travel improvements and utilities that may have limits originally defined by stone walls. My question is the stone wall in the right of way or is the stone wall out of the right of way? Do we even know?
So,
And then, okay, obviously I've opened the can of worms, right? We don't know, do we?
Well, Steve had a recommendation actually in the comments or how to determine that.
Okay.
well, actually, I asked the question. It becomes a burden for anyone who wants to do something.
Right, because the paragraph just above it says you have to prove that it's not in the right of way. And for these really old roads, how would you, Balls Hill, how do you know?
So you hire a professional surveyor and they give you their best opinion.
Okay, so there's the expenses on the person who wants to do the work,
I expect
whether
it
it's
to be
the
that way.
town or a private person.
That's correct.
All right. Implications. Go.
Yeah.
Continue.
So this is all about trees and stone walls in the right of way. And so nothing is set in stone.
Yeah, good.
Until
You had to go there.
No, I want us to make sure we understand. We are making recommendations to planning staff and the planning board. This is how we think the regulations
should be based on our experience and everything.
right.
Yeah, makes sense.
And they may or may not
Make it.
adopt any of these.
Yep.
Right. So a lot was talked about, some of the procedures. We took the time to fill out everything in red there. What we see, but we asked them for considerations, mostly of public works issues. Like, for instance, we asked that in order to designate another road as a scenic road, right? Because we already have quite a few. The planning board shall consider existing plans for traffic improvements, addition of bike lanes, shoulders, and sidewalks, and just, because they may be good, solid plans for the future of the town. Likewise, we ask that they send us the plan And typically, a plan board sends us a plan for review of, say, site plan and so on. It does, so at this point in time, we don't know if they will do so, but we're asking that they send it to the engineering division for review, any plans so that we can look at them relative to any major work on bridges and culverts, drainage, stormwater improvements, or roadside hazards, because those could impact existing features on that scenic road.
And Steve, I think, the compelling case you've made is we may have long-range needs and interests that we're trying to address. And, our challenge in public works is always balance and trying to understand all the stakeholders and interests. What you don't want is one special interest to thwart the other, interests of the town. And that's just what we live day to day with, and that's what we're sensitive to. So you may have something that's, looks very favorable and advantageous to the community, and then somehow an end round happens and freeze, you can't do anything more. So I think the balance is what we're trying to insert.
We've added even, if you are interested, some discussion with the public when the road is going to be designated, in front of the Public Works Commission and the Transportation Advisory Committee. I think that may be pertinent to have such. You may have some interest in what our decisions made, as well as seek from the state agencies that have interest in broader transportation issues in town. Like, for instance, trying to deal with some of the cut-through traffic that we have in this town. You'll have to do something with the state routes. So that may impact, say, with the Stonewalls on Sudbury Road, which is actually a scenic road. Think about it. So do in the future, as you designate roads, do include state agencies that are involved in transportation. Right. So let's see what else I have here. Yeah. So under the application process, section 3, I think the planning folks need to make it clear exactly how they expect applicants to define where, if a stone wall is in the right of way or not. I believe there will be some discussions between us and them to determine that. Let me draw your attention to decision.
3.4.
That's section 3.3.
3.3 and 3.4.
So the draft has certain steps in the decision or certain considerations. It mentions bonding in 3.3, part 3. If you read it, it talks about the plan board may require sufficient bond to be posted to cover the cost of required work within the right of way and to protect existing vegetation and change that to shade trees. Initially, I asked about the legal review. If you look at the private digging of roads bylaw and regulations, we have bond, the performance bond requirement and the insurance requirement for anyone doing work within the right of way. And so there are lots of questions here. One for duplication, I think it's more confusion. A bond has to be set. Somebody has to determine what that bond is. So we need to clarify that with the planning folks. And I think, what do they mean by protecting? How do you protect existing shade trees with a bond? That's something that we don't understand. We have to have a conversation with them on that. I think they really mean insurance, but they can explain what they mean by that.
So if I could jump in again, I really like what you've added on 3.3.3 with the bond. And again, we don't need to duplicate efforts here. And I think the Public Works is in a much better position to determine the value of a bond that should be posted versus the planning board. And that's nothing against the planning board, but it's, you know, it should cover the value of restoring whatever may be damaged. And I think Public Works has a better feel for what those costs would be. So if they're willing to, I think it's better in our hands than theirs, but I also agree there should, whoever wants to do the work shouldn't be required to post 2 bonds, one to the planning board and one to the Public Works or the town. That's, again, duplication. That's not necessary.
And then moving on to consideration of decision 3.4. Yeah, we asked them to look at certain things, but I added under 3.4.8. Yes. Or under 3.4.7, new 3.4.7, they have existence or absence of reasonable alternatives. You know, you see often when you go to planning boards, they talk about, you know, reasonable decisions or reasonable criteria. That's always very subjective. I've sat on a planning board for many, many years. And the only time that reasonable is really, really decided on is when it goes to court. What is reasonable? But of interest to us in Public Works is really affordability. And we may have some road work, some expansions that we want to do. It will impact the right of way, stone walls or trees and so on. And the alternative will be not affordable for us. It will be cost prohibitive. And I've seen often where planning boards would say, the cost doesn't matter. We don't make decisions on cost. So I think we should have that in there, that affordability has to be a consideration, not just the term reasonable. And we throw in there, decisions should consider any threats to significant damage to land, that it's private or public. If you have a situation where a wall is failing and it can cause some considerable damage, that decision can be made in favor of removing stone wall, altering the stone wall. All right, then under exemptions that were alluded to before, we modified some of the conditions there, or the exemptions. Cutting and removal of trees and tree stumps. Aaron will tell you that you cut a tree, usually the stump is going to run into the wall. You have to pull that stump. It's going to alter the wall. You're going to temporarily remove it and rebuild it. And I don't think you want to wait for what they're asking you for several weeks before you get permission to do that. So we asked for an exemption for that. And then on the second exemption, installation of pavement markings, they had that signage. We added all traffic safety improvements. Examples would be putting in like one of those pedestrian signals, because you have a situation where you have a crossing that's unsafe, or adding guardrail because you have a roadside hazard that you need to protect. You want something like that as an exception. And we threw in also the emergency work related to utilities, flooding, erosion, and other critical conditions. Something happens, you don't have to wait for permission. You have to fit the plan before the planning board. You want to take action, like we had to do over on the Sawmill Brook culvert on Monument Street last year, was it?
Right.
Yeah, just last year.
So Steve, does this include what CMLP does every year or two to cut trees near the lines? Is that included in the exemptions here? Or have they looked at that? I guess would be the other question. And to me, that's the one thing that we pointed out that happens all the time, that if it now needs to go through a process, it's going to be delay and expense.
So exemptions 3.5 1, cutting or removal of trees and we're adding and tree stumps by the town in connection with right-of-way maintenance, installation of utilities, or to mitigate, eliminate, or avoid hazardous conditions.
So
Seems to me.
I would hope that that's,
So this
covers
is,
it.
so this is kind of Dave, the ask is, what are we looking for? Feedback. We've done our best job to kind of look at what we see, what are the soft spots, opportunities. Jeff's point of, can we do something legally is, a good, that's the kind of input we need. And then we can sort of go back to planning and, even staff to try and iron some of this out. So we can come back to say, this is kind of where we're falling for. I think that's where we want to go with this. So
Correct, yeah.
those are the questions that are
Agreed.
helpful for us.
okay.
I have a
Okay.
question and it has to do with the process. Since my name is, I'm supposed to sign this motion or the letter,
If
right?
we don't
We
need to
send
take one
something.
today.
Oh,
yeah.
right, but since my name would be on it, I'm trying to understand the process here in terms of the very thoughtful input, the red line you've just gone through to make revisions. How is this being presented or being discussed with the planning board? Are we gonna just hand this to them and say, this is
Please read it.
what the Public Works Commission?
This is what I'm
thinks?
proposing at this point. We get your feedback. Steve's providing an overview of the comments,
Right.
some understanding. You see some things that, you've flagged that are important for us. We probably want to talk with staff and then come back to the commission with a recommendation of redlined, proposal for consideration for the planning board.
Does the planning board know we're doing this
Oh,
process?
so they understand the following, that they need to get some comments and recommendations from the Public Works Commission. That was clear at town meeting. Staff over the summer drafted regulations. So this is the first time we've had an opportunity to look at those draft regulations.
Our staff.
Their staff drafted them. This
Okay.
is the first opportunity we've had to review and discuss with the commission.
Okay, but we're not talking to the planning board staff.
I have,
But please,
I have sent them this, and said, just let you know, this is
yes,
prepared.
okay.
PwC is gonna be discussing this. And when we're done, we'll continue to talk with you.
I'm just concerned that this gets presented to them or whatever we come up with, gets presented to them cold.
Oh, yeah.
And they're not able to absorb it and say, what,
Correct.
that I see it as more as a conversation
Mhm.
back and forth. And please, Jeff, please correct me if I'm wrong, or if you think
I
I'm
think you're fine.
misreading this
You're
right.
fine.
I just want the process to work. So from a change management standpoint, we negotiate and get what the DPW needs
Yeah.
for the town, from our perspective.
Good feedback. Other feedback could be, we love the red line, we're all on board, just please go with it, and so this is the feedback we're after.
So I don't know how much experience even the planning board has with the roads bylaws and these terms and things that you're defining. And partly it's educating them on what a shade tree, I don't know how much expertise they have in this area.
Well, that's what's scary, is that you're taking all of this that was under the jurisdiction of the town, the people who work in public works, who have the expertise through education and long careers, and you're putting it now to people whose board, the committee changes all the time. You don't always know who's on it. You don't always know what their expertise is. It could be all about trees, or all about stone walls, or all about none of it. All about public safety, which was mentioned fourth in the original presentation that we were given about the scenic bylaw as the considered fourth most important thing when you're looking to pass this. So all that is concerning. When you talk about getting a legal review, I would be concerned about that. You're taking public safety from experts and putting it into a committee of non-experts. And what does that mean for our roads and our future plans and all the things we want to do for sustainability and better transportation and sharing the roads? What does that mean when you have those plans and now you have this? And I know that's too much to answer here, but that was my concern to begin with. And I would keep having this conversation with the planning board until everybody understands that.
So Ellen, do you feel that you've gotten enough comments from us today that you can look at your draft and see if you need to make any revisions to it?
Dave's laughing, but I think we heard what we needed to hear. I think this was helpful,
Yeah.
and that's the purpose. And
Okay.
the commission doesn't have to agree on everything, and that's
Yeah.
the good idea of having different thoughts and opinions. And ultimately, as staff, we just want to make sure we're administering your interests. And I think we've heard, feedback that's going to help us with our conversation with staff. Steve, do you hear anything else? You want to
No,
flag anything else that might be?
I think we're doing exactly what we think how it will go.
Yeah.
We will take this feedback, we'll meet with planning staff, we'll review it, and we may end up with a document that's fairly acceptable to most people.
Great. Okay, great. Well, thank you. Thank
Well,
you
there's
for,
one thing I'm for this purpose. I didn't get to the enforcement part, the last piece, compliance. There needs to be a legal review of that as well, because we do have a director and a town engineer enforcement officers for work in the right of way. And this document talks about the planning staff being enforcement officers. So
Yeah,
there's that conflict too.
that seems like a big conflict. Is it not, or,
Well, it needs to be resolved
okay,
one way or the other.
because right now there's two authorities, is that right?
Yes.
And so who wins if they differ in their opinion?
What's the biggest stick, I guess?
Okay.
Thanks, Steve.
Persuasion. It's all about persuasion. So,
thank you, Steve. Thank
yeah,
you.
Steve, thank you for that overview. Again, only a few pages, but the implications are pretty important.
Right.
As someone who's been involved with developing or assisting in development of regulations, even at the state level, they're never perfect. We just try to get as best we can.
So there's no motion to.
No, at this
address
point,
it.
what we're hearing is sort of a follow-up.
You'll come
We'll
back.
come back.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Then can we move on to the third major item on the agenda, which is the capital budget
Sure.
overview?
So I would like to say you hopefully read the memo. It's an overview of what we think is important at this point. We're getting guidance and instruction through the town manager's office and the finance committee to start looking more closely at the capital plans, focused at this point on the general fund for the entire commission's benefit. There's sort of two budget cycles. They all have to dovetail eventually, but the general fund is most important because that's where a lot of the needs and resources are required for the highway grounds, engineering division, cemetery, parks. We also have in public works enterprise funds, and they're on a different track. Those are not as competitive. In essence, ratepayers support those programs. So it's important for the town to understand what departments are requesting what kind of order of magnitude of money for the next fiscal year. We're talking FY24. And so we're a little early in our process of introducing capital planning to the commission, but it's in keeping with the ask of the town manager's office. With that said, in the audience, Bob LaShore is representing town manager's office and here to kind of listen in, and sort of he's giving us some guidance with senior management and public works to give us attention on what we should be focused on. And the capital plan overview, and most importantly, is last year we went through a retooling of our capital plan, and it was very healthy. And that we, with a relatively new senior management group, decided we're going to break down the budget in programs we could understand and communicate effectively. And at that point in time, it was the first ask to look multi-years, which is really important. And I think it's a wise decision on behalf of the town to say, don't just ask for next year, but let us understand what's a 5-year, even 10-year plan, so we can start mapping these things out and integrating when the big expenditures need to be phased. that exercise allowed us to identify a few areas of what we consider replacement and modest improvements of our existing assets. And we put a lot of energy to differentiate between the condition of the paved way, stormwater issues, things that are within the right of way, and things that never were given attention or sufficient attention in the past. And Public Works fell trapped to everything was bundled together. And so you get a lot of money. And so the people who thought they were going to get something say, well, why am I not getting it? You got a lot of money. And other people, so we wanted to make sure that the town made the decision, it's not staff, to figure out, well, what was the priority at town meeting? So we have broken it into programs. We would highlight the fact that we made an ask. We didn't necessarily get everything we asked for. We didn't expect to. But what's important is some of the things we didn't get. When people say, well, where are you with this particular program? Our response, and it's not to be cute, is it wasn't funded. There is no program to report on. Good exercise. We are starting to get, pull together numbers as we speak to repopulate that same format. I think last year was effective where people started to understand what we were asking for, which is healthy and necessary. But in addition to that, if you recall, Envision Concord 2030 also became a priority that was sort of reimagined after a few years of COVID and a lot of staffing change townwide. And basically, we started identifying interests that we hadn't budgeted for in the past. And it's important, Nick Pappas, who's also in the audience, who is I believe the chair of the Transportation Advisory. What's that? So far, continues to be. And basically the Transportation Advisory Committee is a group that was convened, through the select board to advise the town manager and select board on some of these larger transportation issues that aren't the brick and mortar that Public Works is familiar with. So provided sort of with input from staff, sort of what we envision as, sort of not just an update, which we will be doing shortly, and next month we'll come back with our updated capital plan for the things that we've discussed in the past that you're familiar with. But we're also flagging, and I think it's important, and we want to make sure that it's on not just Public Works radar, but other departments as well, a need for transportation funding. And transportation really deals with, kind of think of it as connectivity of the town, sort of how to address not just the traffic, vehicular traffic, but pedestrian, cyclists, visitors, business, residents, all this connectivity. And it's a systems issue, a need. And we're not talking small money. We need to have a plan. We don't have a plan. We have a vision. We have an understanding that we'd like better connectivity, but we need to develop a plan that's got to result in support and funding for design and eventual construction. And this is big money. And if we are being asked to look at 5-10 year sort of budget horizons, we need to start somewhere. So Public Works is taking our first step, at least putting this trial balloon up as it's a need. We're not saying it's really Public Works program, but we can tell you that the town manager's office is, with the support of the select board, has funded a senior transportation planner who reports within the planning, this building, the planning office. That's a good first step. We anticipate third-party support because a senior transportation planner, to be successful, is likely going to be orchestrating and managing a lot of resources, not doing a lot of that work. It's just too much. So we envision, bringing in third-party support. I understand there's funding that's been secured to allow a revisit of our Complete Streets program, which is important. and not just revisit, but to help inform the community of, what does it mean and how can it be leveraged to potentially seek funding, through state, federal, infrastructure grants, and prioritize. So we all understand and the community understands what is the prioritization. And it's literally not just the loudest neighborhood, but it's a balance of the needs of the entire community. And that may then dovetail into some safety issues that we've identified. And I just want to sort of put that out there as we're starting this conversation. This is the first time we're talking to anybody outside of staff that we think it's important. So with transportation, it's a big nut to crack, but beginning, it's the old, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. Well, how do you do a transportation? How do you meet the vision of the town's transportation interests? You got to start with light or small, and we're going to start with some planning. And I think that's going to be public awareness and ideally support for investments that could be more significant. Planning is hundreds of thousands of dollars. Design is hundreds of thousands that leads to millions depending on the scale. And construction is certainly hundreds of thousands, if not tens of millions over the next 10 years. So that's on transportation. We can stop there and have, there's a couple other bins we want to talk about for conversation. Any thoughts on transportation or what we're trying to, at least, the trial balloon we're putting out there?
Let me just see, because that's such a big topic. And
It is.
And important topic. Let me just ask the rest of the commission if they have any comments or thoughts or reactions. And
Not
I'll,
this time.
Jeff or Sven. Yes,
Yep.
please, Jeff.
You probably, I was listening to what you said, Alan, or maybe it was in there, but we really need to think about the strategy, because part of me says, no, we can't do this. Well, you didn't fund us last year, and we told you what we were going to need next year. So now we're just going to combine those two numbers. But I know we can't do that, but I don't know if staff has thought about an approach to this, because we made the case that we are going to need these investments over 10 years. And if you're not investing it in year one, but we said we needed year one to get to 2, 3, 4 and accomplish certain things, is there an approach to how to kind of catch up or admit we can't catch up and it's the town's decision because they didn't fund it?
So it's a great point in question. Last year, we introduced a new concept of the existing infrastructure and we didn't get full funding, but we got awareness.
Yep.
This year, I know the town manager's office is interested in, now that they know it's not reacting to, they're aware of what we asked for last year. They know what the 5-year horizon looked like. And I think they're trying to look at how creatively, how can we realize that? Are there ways of looking at it so it's not the year to year? Do we look at, long-term debt to try and, borrowing to get caught up? Because as we underinvest, our costs continue to increase. So at least there's a conversation now in September where we can start having that conversation. Last September, it wasn't on anybody's radar. So I think we succeeded by getting it there. These are steps, incremental. So that's on the existing needs. The new needs, this is the first volley of these transportation issues haven't been, other than touched upon in Envision Concord 2030, nobody is taking the reign to advocate or champion for these. So we need to start talking about it. And that's what our interest is, at least today.
Great, thanks.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for sharing that and for stopping for a moment. Because I think it's exciting. It's pretty intense.
It's important and it's a lot of work. Facilities is the other bin that has been out there, but not really in the radar for public works. A few years ago, there was a master plan for municipal facilities. And it sort of occurred under, different leadership, and we, current staff in public works wasn't, particularly involved. But what we've heard from the town manager is an interest to realize that I'm going to start with, public works first. Our campus is is woefully inadequate for the services and equipment materials that we provide and need to protect and maintain. So that's important. So we've gotten the town manager's support to say, we do want to focus on that. We've had considerations in that initial master plan of potentially relocating. That did not appear to be feasible. We're probably looking at somewhere in the tune of a $20 million, overhaul to this campus. We're putting it on the radar. Last year, we didn't have it. Our staff wasn't even aware that that was consideration. I think there was a different focus at that point. So we're flagging that. We also are realizing, and the opportunities to serve the town, we have a new facilities department. They've been around for 3 or 4 years, I think, something like that. They're just starting to get their arms around their needs. We've had change in their leadership. We have a recreation department who's all about the services that they provide. But I think with the introduction of the Beatty Center, a few years back, with the improvements to White Pond, to Giroux property, there's needs of the existing facilities, the tennis courts, the tracks, all these things that are services to the community. We're starting to have a conversation, I think, for the first time, of the department heads and senior managers to talk about identifying all the needs. What are the assets? What are the maintenance needs? What are the improvement needs? Who is responsible for what aspect? And we're trying to do that collectively. And so we've kind of flagged that as we're not sure who's going to say, what department's responsible for the improvement over at the Emerson Park when the tennis courts go. Well, someone has to take responsibility, so we put it on a capital plan. And so we're doing that collectively. We flagged it as one of those things that we're involved with. And as we expand and we add infrastructure, we have to understand there's an impact on our existing maintenance expectation. So the good news is we're thinking about it and we're collaborating with other departments. So that's an important one that we wanted to flag, for the commission. An example, facilities where it's a bit of an orphan is the synthetic fields up at Douglas White Field. Public Works, is that the lead entity on that program? We provide maintenance. Should we be the lead on any of the actual replacement? Advocating for what's the cost? Is it going to be synthetic turf? People will look at, could it be natural turf? Those questions are going to come up, and so we just want to be prepared. That's the biggest one we had on our radar, but I think the bandwidth for Public Works hasn't been to take a leadership role in that other than just flag it at this point. So those are facilities. Any kind of questions on that or sort of the approach?
Questions? Any questions, Jeff? No, thanks, Ben. Okay,
All right.
thank you.
And then the final issue is safety. And, we're really fortunate. And I'm going to just, kind of blow the horn of some of the staff that we have in town. Steve Dukran, has a lot of transportation experience. It's not his direct role responsibility, but the whole idea of the safety needs, looking at our intersections, looking at the connectivity of some of the neighborhoods. We're aware of issues that, concern the community for years. We're talking about the Baker Ave, Main Street intersection. We're looking at Sudbury Road, Thoreau intersection. There are potential conflicts that need to be addressed, and they haven't fit within any of our, pre-existing bins. And so whether safety is, we're talking about conflicts of the Junction Park with pedestrians and cyclists and designs that may or may not lend themselves to, comfort for some people. Those sorts of things are significant when you look at it as a project. The planning, the design and construction are not inexpensive. I hearken back to the Sudbury Road pedestrian crossing that we did over by the Canantum area,
7-star.
7-star area. That was a estimated probable cost estimate of 20,000. It ended up costing 140,000.
Right.
That was for what people would say, didn't you just paint some lines? Now, when you're talking about bridges and things like that, that have to sort of go over,
Yeah.
It gets expensive. If we want to realize them, we need to at least identify them. Our job is to just flag this. So is safety a subset of transportation? It could be. We're putting out, so we're just putting a placeholder here. So that's the intent. No.
Okay. Is there any comment you want from the board or any?
No, we
response
just
other
want
than-
to let you know the direction we're headed. And Aaron, I'm sorry, in equipment. Aaron wants us to make sure that he's right. When we talk about capital planning, how many pieces of equipment do we manage? Over 100 pieces of rolling fleet, registered. And if you could see on your way in, a new street sweeper, we have a sidewalk plow, and these things, this equipment is not inexpensive, but the expectation of the community is that we're using this equipment and we're using it regularly.
The question is, how do you keep it out of the weather?
And how do you keep it out of the weather speaks to the challenges we have with the
this site,
existing
yeah.
site.
Yeah.
So,
There's no place to put it except outside.
well,
right?
we're looking for volunteers,
Oh,
driveways, garages.
Our garage,
Adopt a piece of heavy equipment program. You haven't heard that?
That should work.
Your street's plowed first when we get there. No, so those are the issues,
Yeah.
and those are, part of our responsibility to just flag. So, Aaron, thank you for that. So that's the budget, and there's not an ask other than we will come back with more details. We want to make you aware, and you're the first to
And the
come in.
numbers here are actually last year's numbers. Is that correct?
Yes, this was
So-
last year's
so you have
numbers.
to-
We have to go
We
through
have to go
this and
look at
revise
them,
it.
and
Correct.
obviously, things that were expensive last year are going to be more expensive.
Yeah, thank you for reminding us and flagging that the economy is
Yeah,
this
it's doing a bad thing for us.
Yeah,
Just
FY
like the school.
24, FY 24 is the new FY 23, and it's very different with supply side challenges, with just getting vendors and contractors to be able to provide reasonable estimates for projects when they don't know what their supply side is. It's getting increasingly expensive. We've heard 25% increases in a lot of the municipal work.
Really? Wow, gosh. Gee. So does that conclude then the capital budget overview?
Yes, it does.
Wonderful, thank you. Now we turn now to the director's report.
Okay, very good. So let me go to screen.
Thank you, Alan, for that.
So can everybody see the screen at this point?
Yep.
So just want to
Oh.
flag, Mike Haynes has served Concord, local guy, served Concord for over 33 years in the Park and Tree group under Aaron's sort of command. Mike has been a very dedicated, constant, for Public Works. He represents the sort of the institutional knowledge that we're losing. It's always a challenge, a lot of experience. Mike would be the last person who would want his name and face projected, but we think in courtesy to him and his commitment, we just wanted to sort of acknowledge his service. So he retired. The good news is, I think he's a golfer and, maybe, make some time to, get out on the course and enjoy the rest of his life. He's worked hard, and just want to acknowledge that.
Dave,
Yes, please.
I'd like to make a motion that the Public Works Commission send a letter of thanks to him on his retirement.
Sure, I would gladly second that motion. Do we need to have a vote to,
Sure, I think, let's be formal.
okay.
Yep.
I'm sorry.
Andrea Solomon,
Aye.
Jeff Vassar,
Is absolutely an appropriate response.
yes, yes.
Okay.
James Terry.
Aye.
I think Sven, I'm not sure if Sven's still with us. I think he may have had to ring off.
Yeah.
David DeLong, aye. So it's unanimous. So,
Talk to Anna. I'm sure you can get a little letter out pretty quickly.
yes.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you
great.
for
Thank you.
making us aware of the retirement for 33 years.
No, and it's, he's one of those people, they appreciate working for the community, Concord and the volunteers, and, so thank you for that.
Let me just use this as a moment to point out that in the packet, in case you missed it, there were a collection of basically thank you letters from citizens for the performance that was very impressive, that I hope people see that. And I know you're passing these on to people mentioned, but it was quite moving to see the appreciation from citizens for the work that's being done. It was really, really nice. And I just want to make sure that that was called out and recognized. Thank
Okay.
you.
All right,
Thank
thank you. So I'm going to continue on in the interest of time.
Yes.
We have a hard stop at 6. If we got done before it, we get, cookies tomorrow or something. So with that, engineering, Steve, do you want to just quickly go through? And I know we have a few high points we want to make sure we hit for awareness. It's been a while since we last got together.
Okay,
So
I think our focus will be related to roads paving, right?
Mhm.
Anyway, these are slides of Barrett's Mill. We applied the asphalt rubber, which is a preservation technique as a pilot program. So it shows the actual application. It shows what you do on the right top, covering the catch basin, and half of the finished product is in the bottom. So I'll talk some more about it right after. Here on Commonwealth Ave, we are getting prepared for the project out there, the road and sidewalk project. So this shows with CMLP installed a new light pole. We changed all the lights. And here is the regular paving occurring on Nurse Neck Hill Road. I think those cover our slides, but let me just take a moment to talk about the actual roads program for this year. So if you might recall, we started out with a new approach this year where we were going to do a fair amount of preservation on a trial basis. One method being what we looked at earlier, the asphalt rubber, which is a chip seal with chips that are coated in rubber, so black chips. And the second method being microsurfacing. And then we were going to implement a method called cold in place recycling. So we had 3 contracts out, asphalt rubber, microsurfacing, combined with a cold in place recycling. We had 1 bid for that. And the third contract being a regular conventional paving of mill and overlay, as well as reclamation. We signed a contract for asphalt rubber. We did Barrett's Mill, College Road, Nurse Neck Hill Road, Hildreth, and Farmers Cliff. Initially, we got some feedback that people weren't too thrilled. The appearance, the texture, and stuff to walk on, the pets and so on. And then the loose chips, because there's loose chips when you put this thing down. And as well as some overspraying on the edges. We had a contractor was that careful in some places. We assure them that this is usually what people go through. People who've been doing this for a while. Other towns that we collaborated with, like Lexington, Arlington, Bedford. And with time, the chips do get pushed into the pavement, and it becomes better. And they tell us that you wait for a winter season, you go through a winter season of plowing and so on, and it gets smoothened out. And the product in the end is quite acceptable, and it adds that preservation of a road that's still in good shape, and you get 5 to 7 more years, and you prevent that quick deterioration. So it's a wait and see situation. The complaints have not been coming in recently, so I think people are getting used to it. And if you drive Barrett's Mill, you hardly notice it is a problem. The neighborhood roads will probably take a little longer because of the amount of traffic they get, and so on. Now, the second project, which we advertised and got a bid for, the cold in place recycling and the microsurfacing, came in at an alarmingly high price. We were looking at around $900,000. It came in at 1.4 million. And it has to do with the current climate of cost increases and all of that. And we just didn't have the budget to sustain that contract. So we tried to negotiate it, it wouldn't budge. And so we pulled out the cold in place recycling portion, which to be applied to the Madison Drive neighborhood, 3 to 4 streets in that neighborhood. But the microsurfacing part of the contract was at the price expected. So we're going to go through it with the microsurfacing, which is the other preservation treatment we're going to pilot. Prairie Street, Pleasant Street, Wright Road, and we're going to put a coat on Hildreth on top of the asphalt rubber. And that's like a double protection, double treatment, and that's called Cape Seal. We don't think the program has enough funds to do that, but we're trying that out to compare, how it works in the neighborhood as well as how long it will give us the life expectancy of this combined product. So the microsurfacing will be, the preparation work has started, and that will be applied towards the end of this month and early next month. The third contract, which is a regular, mill and overlay and reclamation, we're going to schedule the first, the Snack Hill Road, we did the Anson, and what are the other streets out there? Out in the south side.
Raymond Road and
Raymond.
Alden. Raymond and Alden.
Right, those are the ones that's completed. We have a lot more work in that contract to do. Commonwealth Ave, where we are doing the sidewalk project, that will be done. We're going to schedule for that. Let me just mention that project. That project is a complete rebuild of the sidewalk right in front of the businesses. We had a significant delay by National Grid, pushing the project late in the summer. Now that we're ready to get started, the curbing suppliers don't have enough curbing to deliver. So what we're going to do, we're going to just reclaim the road, repave it, bring it to binder, and button it up for the winter time. And make it safe enough so we can plow and get through the winter, and then resume the sidewalk work, curb and sidewalk work in the spring of next year. As far as the streets that we pulled, the Madison's neighborhood streets, we have added them to the third contract by change order. So all of the streets that we planned on doing this year will get some measure of paving. And so Alan mentioned earlier that we'll be back in October to talk about the program for next year. Because of all the changes that are happening in pricing and our experience with preservation, we have our contract with a third party to give us a review of the program and to make recommendations of what streets we want to do next year, because it's important that we make the right investments in the right places. And so I hope we'll have that evaluation done by the time we come back next month to present the program.
Steve, I just want to add on ComAv, we were already looking at a provision to phase that work. We were going to do a reclaim and binder course, because the intent was to get the work done during off-peak period. That's a commercial area, doing the curbing and sidewalks while they're trying to get into their holiday seasons just would not have been was not expected. And so we thought, as a courtesy, we would phase it anyway. So I think we've already started that outreach, so people are aware of that. So I mean, we try to be preemptive when looking at the challenges, and work with the neighborhoods, and that's a good example. A lot of back and forth with the West Concord Advisory Committee, the business partnership. They're kind of aware. So with that, Steve, thank you very much. I'm going to go to Aaron, if you could quickly go through. You got some great visuals. We'll just work right through these.
Yeah, good evening, Aaron McCloskey, Highway and Ground Superintendent. A few photos here, routine maintenance. This is the loader with a roadside mowing attachment. Roadside mowing is an annual program, starts in the spring, continues through. This week, we're wrapping up townwide. We're using this machine and servicing it and winterizing it. So see it, I'm sure, on a number of roads. The cutback has been aggressive, I would say, this season and the last season. While we got this new machine, there's some deferred maintenance over the prior few seasons, so that's why you've seen it. As vegetation starts to grow back, it'll look more aesthetically pleasing for those areas. But we use this in combination with crews using hand tools to clear sight signs of roadside vegetation. Photo of the catch basin cleaner. This is again a regular maintenance that we do. We can do this year round and target a number of catch basins throughout town. We use GIS software to track, and then we also perform visual inspections and of each catch basin when we maintain it and clean it, and provide that information to engineering so they can build that into kind of capital planning for stormwater infrastructure improvements.
As part of our MS4 compliance activities as well, the stormwater regulations.
Over the summer, Highway and Ground supported various public events. This is a photo of picnic in the park, large event in Emerson, and is two employees assisting setting up the tables for that event.
Generally, we're the Keebler Elves before and after these events.
Photo of the Melbourne Memorial Sleepy Hollow Cemetery. Friends of Sleepy Hollow donated funding to the town for the installation of these bollards. Previously, there was some plastic bollards there for a number of years. These were purchased by the Friends and installed through a third-party contractor that we oversaw the project. And that is a very nice photo, great project, came out well, and encourage anyone to stop by the cemetery and to take a look. A few years ago, there's some restoration that was done and completed for that as well. So yeah, this is a photo of, we try to encourage, by training, encourage like participation in different events such as Mass Highway, or this is a photo of the snow rodeo that took place in Mount Wachusett. It's kind of a driving skills competition for plow operators. You can see the dump truck with a plow. There's also a loader plow competition. A lot of towns send employees. We sent two-person teams to this event. The employees, I think, enjoyed the experience, got some skills, and got to kind of show off what they can do. So it's a friendly competition amongst communities. So.
And these operators operate that very expensive equipment we're trying to invest in. So they need to know what they're doing and do.
That's cool.
There's a photo of a driveway on Cambridge Turnpike. Obviously, everyone I think is familiar with the capital project that took place a few years back. That changed the elevation of the roadway, and it actually exposed two large boulders, ledge almost in between the two driveway aprons, like a U-shaped driveway, and then on the edge, the butter had complained that they were experiencing vehicle damage when pulling in and out of the driveway. So we were able to go in and actually hammer out the material that was located in the right of way and completely eliminate that hazard and repair it. So this is kind of final compaction before paving of the driveway.
Thank you, Aaron. We've
Thank
gone to the Water Sewer Division. Jeff Morofsky is the superintendent joining us. I think we're going to sort of tag team. Jeff, if you want to take the
wastewater, I've got water.
All right, I'll do the wastewater very quickly. You all received, there's been a lot of activity lately regarding and acknowledging and understanding a bottleneck that we've talked about for decades within public works, and that's on the wastewater capacity and constraint. For the commission, reminder, our guidance is the comprehensive wastewater management plan that was submitted to the state and certified by the Secretary of EEA. Also went through town meeting to adopt a plan of what to do with the finite capacity that was available. These plans are considered 20-year plans. We've made it 20 years. We have not exceeded our permit. We have seen, well, a plan is just that. Reality's been the following. We did expand our sewer system to a couple neighborhoods. That was good. They needed it. We have not had the funding to expand to some of the other neighborhoods that were identified as priority. Any neighborhood outside the areas that we identified 20 years ago were never considered to be part of the municipal system. It was established at that point that this is our control. Over the 20 years, we've had infill that's happened, different developments that come in and they abut or front, the municipal sewer. The commission's aware that when there's a relatively significant request for capacity, that allowance is vetted through the Public Works Commission and very judiciously allocated. But again, the plan has been our compass. We continue to be on course. The challenge is we have yet to realize any increase in our permitted allowance at the treatment plant. A reminder, we submitted an application to EPA and DEP for an increase in capacity. We're on hold awaiting a response. But all the while, the town continues to evolve and identify new needs and interests. You all received an invite to the housing production plan. In essence, that's through the planning department to look at housing stock and inventory in Concord and needs to, sort of expand the portfolio. There's a realization that capacity is a constraint, hence your invite to at least participate in these meetings. It's the beginning of a process. I'm sure we're going to come back to talk about how is it we can accommodate or not, different interests. We've also have the Christopher Heights. That's a project that is located off of Com Ave, right by the prison, which is, I think, an 84 unit assisted living complex, which is looking at could they somehow tie into municipal sewer. And basically it's not just the capacity, it's the fact that our plan doesn't allow for expansions beyond what we've identified. So that's going to be discussions that we're going to have in the future. So I just wanted to put that on your radar that there's been murmurings, and I think that invitation to the housing production plan meeting, I just wanted you to be aware of why us and, how do you need to be engaged, and staff is going to be, certainly tracking and shadowing all those activities. So that's on the wastewater side, just as a quick update. Jeff, you want to talk on the water side?
Yep, last leg of the relay race here. There's a lot in this slide, so I'll try to be quick. Before I actually start, though, I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce the commission to Giovanni Caceres, who joined us in mid-July as the Public Works Engineer, Water Systems. I'm thrilled to have Giovanni on the team. In this slide, we've got a lot going on. It's touching on Nagog Water Treatment Facility, the subject of PFAS that the commission is all familiar with, and what the ramifications are. As I'm sure we all remember and know, in 1874, William Wheeler built Concord Waterworks.
Yeah.
And in 1884, Lake Nagog became a surface water supply for the town of Concord. Nagog Pond is the sole surface water supply that the town currently has, and it's operated seasonally to help water supply during high use periods from usually month of May through month of September. In 1974, the federal government passed the Safe Drinking Water Act, and in 1989, the Surface Water Treatment Rule within the Safe Drinking Water Act was passed. That had a provision requiring surface water supplies be filtered, and once that was passed and accepted by the state, the town had to apply and appeal to the state for a filtration waiver, and we've been operating the Nagog Ponds under a filtration waiver since that time. So it's always been on borrowed time before we actually have to move forward with a filtration facility. We've been working on this for probably 10 years, I believe, maybe even a little bit more than that. The project, when it was first developed and conceived, was proposing to site a treatment plant on the property to the southeast of Nagog Pond, where the ozone facility is currently located. It's a very constrained site that has changed development-wise throughout the years, where there was a lot of wooded land surrounding it when we first had a presence on the lake, and now there's a lot of residential homes to the south of that property. So we began looking at alternative sites, and there was a lot of history between Acton and Littleton and the town of Concord that we don't need to go into, but there's a lot of history that had limitations and a lot of NIMBY attitude amongst the residents that surround that property. So we looked at alternatives, and on the screen for the presentation, you'll recognize that parcel is the wedge of lands between Route 2A and Route 2 on the western side or the northwestern side of the rotary circle. That's the Gulf gas station in the lower right-hand corner of the picture. There's a town-owned parcel that includes the current CMLP, which is off to the upper left off of the frame. And the same parcel is where we're contemplating siting or relocating as an alternate site location, the Nagog Pond Water Treatment Facility. And we're looking at different alternatives on configurations of the building on that parcel. This is just one of those configurations, alternative A. Back to PFAS in October of 2020, it became a state regulation for the PFAS 6 compounds of 20 parts per trillion limit. And we've done fairly well amongst our supplies, having concentrations that are well below that limit, but still present. This summer, we convened a Nagog Pond Water Treatment Facility working group that involved planning, light board, town manager, select board, members of the Public Works Commission, of course, and that group met for the first time on June 14th this year. The very next day, EPA issued out a notice of a health advisory going to uncharted territories where it's in the hundreds or tenths of a part per trillion for different compounds. And it gets into the area of parts per quadrillion, and it's really below detection levels. But that's the writing on the wall. And it first was kind of hitting us in the face with Nagog Pond Water Treatment Facility. But the ramifications are it wouldn't just apply to this location, it's going to apply to all locations, including the groundwater well supplies, and we could possibly be facing treatment requirements at each of those locations. And this led us to contemplating outreaching to open discussions with Mass Water Resource Authority for a potential water supply, an alternative water supply, whether it's a blended supply or sole supplying. These negotiations also commenced over the summer. I believe it was in August when we had our first meeting. We actually have another meeting planned with MWRA on this very subject tomorrow as well. And at this time, I believe there's 9 communities in the Metro West area that includes Concord that has an interest in this, because this is not just affecting Concord, this is affecting all water suppliers throughout the country. I think I've hit on all the points here. Is there anything I left out?
One minor point. We are not having a special town meeting this fall. That was when we teed up early to have that special committee, because we knew there could be a lot of activity that would lead to outreach and communication of a very expensive treatment facility. We understand at that point it was about $30 million probable cost estimate. We're looking at now about 35.
Yeah,
So 35 and a half. Okay, thank you. So, and that is for Nagog alone. So when we look at these other sources, we're probably looking at a $50 to $75 million need over the next 5 to 10 years. That's very real money. It's very necessary. And that's where other communities are in similar situations of looking at treatment that they hadn't anticipated just a year ago. And because of that, there's an interest to have a conversation that we never would have had before. What about a regional supply, which is not insignificant, but it would be a once in a, 50, 100-year decision that needs to be made. And we're looking to see, is there and can there be collaboration? Can the community's interests be, sort of pooled together, and the resources? MWA has suggested a willingness and interest to talk to, the Metro West area. They've already had conversations with the North Shore, the Ipswich. They've talked down to the South Shore. Nowhere have they had communities that appear to be willing to work collaboratively. That's always been a challenge for them. And there is an opportunity that the infrastructure bill could potentially be a source of funds that wouldn't have been even understood or realized a year or two ago. So maybe a confluence of a lot of needs, interests, creates an opportunity. But so we just wanted the commission to be aware that the question on the Nagog Pond, we're taking it to final design, but we're not prepared to go to town meeting yet without an answer to, well, what about the other sources as well? So that's what we're looking at over the next 6 months.
We did reapply for drinking water SRF though in August.
Just for next year, yeah.
Just to keep our sort of place in the queue.
Quick question. So the regional solution, is that proposing or potentially, and I realize this is way down the road, would that be a whole nother source of water for the town?
Yes.
Does it put the wells like on hold?
It
and
would
just-
allow us to connect to Quabbin, Wachusett. That's the source of supply.
Yeah.
They have tested for these PFAS compounds, their traces.
Yeah.
But realistically, we're looking at EPA developing standards somewhere in the 2-4 part per trillion.
Yeah.
MWA appears to be well positioned for that, but that's the next foot to drop. And it would be a source. They'd provide the water, we'd distribute it. And it would require infrastructure to be installed. It would go through Framingham, Wayland, Sudbury, Concord, Acton, you name it.
Wow. Okay.
It's a big initiative.
I'm expecting the EPA to issue out proposed maximum contaminant level goals later this year. And they could potentially become regulation in calendar 23.
Wow.
Later in calendar 23, we would estimate.
Okay.
Oh, that's an update.
Wow. Thank you.
Jeff and Alan, I've got one question. There were a bunch of leaks in the last month or two. Do we have a plan for looking at old pipes and replacing them? Is it only when roads get fixed, or do we have other concerns?
I'll take that as a lead, and Jeff was sort of starting to help us identify the needs. We have prioritized water main replacement based on age and material and condition, and those in that order. And we do dovetail with the roads program as much as possible. But the roads program we do much more road than we can do cost, per linear feet of pipe. So we are looking at our budget escalating over the next few years to about $1.5 million a year. It's about a mile or so of replacement. We have 130 miles of pipe. So, and a useful life of 75.
Shield them or clad them, or does that make the flow too small?
There's different techniques right now. Well, there may be innovation that happens because we're not alone. You look across the country and aging infrastructure is just, look at Jackson, Mississippi right now. We're not alone, but we are looking to develop a hydraulic model of our system. That's going to help us inform us to how and what would a connection to a regional supplier look like, and how would that integrate with our neighbors potentially. So we're going to go through that sort of analysis as well. But the program right now, Concord does better than most, but we're still not there as far as our replacement schedule. We had a delay this past year. Usually we do a construction project each summer. but the supply side issues became a problem for us to do butternut. So we've actually, Jeff's idea was, let's go out and buy the material so we aren't dependent upon that as a bottleneck. So we actually did a procurement for material. We've already received some of the delivery, and then we'll be putting together install. We'll furnish, and the contract will install next summer, which will be good. So, but this is a good question, Jim. We're mindful of it, and there is our own algorithm, but it's part practice and part art.
Does that complete the director's report?
It does, yes, thank you.
In interest of time, I would ask the commissioners if they have any comments, and it's fine if they don't. Jeff? I feel an obligation to open it up to public comment.
Sure.
If there's a public comment at this time, the commission would entertain that. Anna, I don't know if you're there, but if you see any hands raised or any,
I'm here. No hands are raised, Dave.
okay, all right. Then,
I move we adjourn.
you second? We have a vote on that, Andrea?
Aye.
Jeff, if you're still there, you may be gone.
Jeff had the lead.
Yeah, James? Terry? David DeLong, aye. I hereby declare this meeting adjourned, and thank you very much, and thanks to the audience. Thank you all for hanging in, because I know it's not fun. Thank you for sitting through this. Appreciate it. Yes, thank you.